No one knows what the future holds, but if a new house is in your future, I can help from a safe distance. I'm Nick Acosta, your downtown expert, and I'm hosting safe and sanitary open houses. Nothing is different except for temperature checks at the door and masks are required. But it still smells like there are fresh baked cookies in the oven. So come on by one of my safe and sanitary open houses, and I'll say welcome home from 6 feet away.
This is Home2All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast with your host, Nicholas Acosta. Nick sits down with guests to talk about real estate and how it works. Reach him at downtown.expert on Facebook and Instagram, or his website, www.downtown.expert, or call or text him at 407-508-8809. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, everybody. This is Nicholas Acosta, your host of the podcast Home2All, all-inclusive real estate podcast, coming to you from St. Petersburg, Florida. Don't forget www.downtown.expert. We have Blanchard Insurance today. We have quite a bit to talk about with it being summertime, hurricanes, and cybercrime. Hey there, Mike. How's it going?
Hey, great, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's trying to stay cool in this hot summer that we have, and dry, because it's been raining here.
Yeah, I was going to comment that a lot of rain this week and getting a little lightning as well. We actually have our state insurance association convention down in Shingle Creek in Orlando, right going on the tail end of this week through the weekend. And we actually sent a couple of our team members down there to play in like the annual golf tournament. And it was all hyped up to do it because Shingle Creek is obviously a beautiful resort. And it was the first time some of the Andy actually went down for us, and Jason was going to go too, so they've never really done it before. So the experience was going to be great. And they got washed out at I think it was 8:00 in the morning with all that rain that we were having midweek. So it was kind of a downer for them, but a good experience all in all. But we are back into the rainy season.
Most definitely. I was kind of getting concerned over here for a while, but in the last couple of days, we've had some severe storms and rain, and actually some lightning strikes too. So, I guess we could talk about that first if you want. Real quick, because I just saw this from Jason, and I know we talked about it on pre-show over there with you guys at Blanchard Insurance about the insurance policies. Are they stopping from binding the policies right now because of the cyclone we have in the Gulf, or no?
Yeah, absolutely. And ashamedly, I wasn't really paying that close attention to it because I woke up to my email saying, I was like, cyclone. I didn't even recognize that. Shows you how close me personally is paying attention, but the rest of our staff were on it. But it's the state. Citizens is obviously shut down right now. They're usually the first ones who always shut down, and everybody kind of falls in line based on what they're going to do. So a lot of the companies have started shutting down. It hasn't gotten really bad in Central Florida or even over there in Pinellas and Pasco County and Hernando and all that on the West Coast. It's really been contained right now to Northwest in the Panhandle. Counties have completely shut down. But it depends on which way it goes. If it intensifies, the insurance companies will start shutting down more. I will tell you that 2 or 3 years ago, if we weren't in this horrendous homeowners insurance market that we have now in Florida with all the roof fraud and everything else going on, I'd say right now they wouldn't even be concerned and none of them would be closed. But since that is a major problem going on right now, with the fraud and litigation and everything, they're not really taking any chances. So I would say if it gets a little closer and intensifies, you might see some counties closing. And then what we've been recommending to our clients is, just because of this hard market that we're in regards to insurance, that even though if a client may be closing on a house 30 days out, to secure insurance, we're telling them, I mean, like if it's, dry and sunny outside, go ahead and get the policy. Because again, I'm coming in Friday going like, well, what the hell? Everybody's shutting down, starting to shut down. I didn't even know. So don't really take those chances. And that happens every single year. People wait, unfortunately, to the last minute. Title waits to the last minute, mortgage and everybody else on the insurance side. And they try to get to the closing table. And closings can sometimes get pushed back, by a week or even 2 weeks sometimes once these companies reopen. Because you got to think about this, too. If a major cat hits, like let's say Michael or Irma or Matthew, or down in Florida, like if a Hurricane Andrew or Katrina, any of that happens, and these insurance companies aren't really quick to reopen in the aftermath too. So if you have damage, they can stay shut for a good week or two, which could put things back further. And you also have to remember that maybe when they reopen, they just don't have the capacity to even provide insurance. So kind of the rule of thumb is, like I said, if it's clear skies and it's dry and you're going to close in 30 days during hurricane season, go ahead and secure your insurance. Do not wait, because it becomes an anomaly at that point in time.
No, I agree. Yeah. Speaking of which, I was like not paying attention to these things that I didn't even look at this radar from, by the way, the National Weather Service, radar.gov or whatever. You can see that the storm looks pretty organized, and we even got some feeder bands coming into Tampa Bay probably in the next couple hours.
Yeah, is it a named storm yet? I knew it was called like Cyclone number 3 this morning. Have they named it?
I don't see a name on here yet, but it doesn't look like they've named it yet. But it looks like probably just because it's disorganized at this time. So,
yeah, and for all listeners out there wondering when it becomes, under your hurricane deductible or your all peril deductible, it's called a named storm. It's not really, they should call it a named storm hurricane instead of a hurricane deductible, because if a tropical storm actually has a name attached to it, then you do go under that, the common 2% deductible that most people have here in Florida. If it's literally called, Tropical Storm 1 or Cyclone 1, then you go under your all peril deductible. And there's a big difference in it too, because your hurricane deductible is actually a calendar year aggregate deductible. So if you get, hit with Storm 1, it doesn't do enough damage to make a claim, you can actually save those receipts. And if Storm 2 causes more damage or a separate incident, you're only paying that hurricane or that named storm deductible once per year. And that's a big misconception that a lot of people don't really understand, because it's truly a calendar year deductible. But unfortunately, if you get hit with Tropical Storm 1, 2, and 3, then you're paying separate deductibles. But usually, in those cases, the deductible's closer to $1,000 or $2,500.
Yeah, just to give you an update, Mike, and everybody listening, I just looked it up on it looks like a news site from maybe New Orleans. It is now officially called Claudette. Tropical Storm Claudette. Yep. Yeah,
so then you're going straight into those 2% average deductibles. You would go under the named storm deductible at this point if anything happens from that storm. And people don't also realize, if the storm is in the area, and let's say you have hail that comes out of it, or you have a tornado that comes out of it, as long as there's a named storm in the vicinity and that type of weather pattern can be traced back to the actual storm, you're still going under your named storm deductible. And a lot of people kind of question that. And it's kind of like, yeah, well, there's a hurricane off the coast. If a tornado happens in Lake County, for example, where a lot of them do, you're going under that hurricane deductible, because they always go back to the original cause of the storm. And in this case, it would be the tropical storm.
All right. Well, so with that, Mike, let's talk about what's happening in the title world with cybercrime. Are there new cases of potential fraud or theft in cybercrime?
Yeah, it's a great question. Just this week, we noticed, and it started happening on Wednesday and kind of flowed over into Thursday as well, where we do a lot of home closings. We do a lot of refis. Probably right now, there's a lot of, we're doing a lot of refis. So they're coming in, we're trying to process them. And then usually what we do is when we get the requests from the title companies or the banks, we do reach out to our insureds and contact them and make sure, we have authorization and this is, completely legit. But what we started seeing was some emails coming in from different, I'm talking large title companies, and they looked very legit, like legitimate emails. They had closing instructions, they had wiring instructions, they had the email signature right, even the email addresses. And we figured out they were like one letter off, but they looked really legitimate. So if you had, info at, acmetitle.com, and that, let's say that's the legitimate website domain address, somebody was going out there and creating a website called Acme's title.com. So it's really good. I haven't seen phishing emails that good. And we were just getting a plethora of them over 2 days. It seems to have calmed down today because I think maybe a lot of the title companies kind of caught on to what's happening. And we actually called a bunch of our colleagues in the insurance business, other agencies and brokerages, to ask them if they were receiving the same thing. And they all confirmed that, those were coming through. And you do kind of see this in cyber attacks and cyber hacks, or even these phishing scams, that they will blitz the market. And I think what they're doing in title right now is they're putting out a lot of feelers to see if, how much, crime they can cause. And if it turns out to be lucrative, for them, I probably continue.
It's just crazy. So we're basically saying that the criminals are getting smarter because they know we've already been learning or conditioned to look for typos or unusual verbiage in an email. I mean, they are definitely, it sounds like, getting smarter at trying to trick us. So we have to be even more vigilant as consumers and as businesses.
Exactly. And that's a great point that you just made, Nick, where you're talking about where we're doing a ton of refis. I mean, your average realtor, in a large brokerage, they're probably doing a lot of transactions, but your average like individual realtor is, hopefully they're closing more than 5 homes a month, but they're doing a smaller number of transactions, where an insurance agency that has been doing, writing thousands of homes, times, 10 years or even more, the amount of refis we get in, especially during the summer months, is huge. We could be getting up to 50 refi requests a day where we're updating mortgagee clauses and whatnot. So I think that's why they're targeting the insurance industry, is because they know there's a volume and they're trying to slip it in, because we're still getting legitimate requests, mind you, but they're trying to kind of slip these in so we screw up. So it's really important. And we're cognizant of it, and our IT is very cognizant of it as well. But again, to your point, yes, the forgery is getting really good right now.
Wow, it's just crazy. So I guess we can go into, now we're here in Florida, and I'm sure this happens to you, and I know it happens to me and everybody out here in my neighborhood or in different all neighborhoods. People knocking on our door trying to sell us a new roof, even though our roof is not even that old. What's going on with that in terms of roofer reform in the state of Florida?
They just passed reform, and me and Allie kind of did a small segment on our Facebook page this week. So if anybody wants really in-depth information, please check it out. I think it's about like a 12-minute piece we did. But to answer your question, Nick, they passed legislation, and the legislation, in a brief synopsis of it, is they outlawed and made it illegal for roofers to individually target homeowners, meaning they can't go knock on your door, they can't leave a door hanger, they can't leave a business card, they can't target you individually. And I took a look at that and I was like, as a disclaimer, any type of reform and for fraud is good in my book. But I look at, the long play here. Is it going to fix the problem? And unfortunately, I can tell you it's going to put a dimple-sized dent in the fraud. And what I mean by that is I think the culprit here in the advertising basis going all the way back, to 2008 and how this all started was, Nick, you got a free roof. So your roofer is putting a sign in your yard, your own yard. You're already an existing client. So this rule doesn't apply there, saying, hey, I'm the roofer. We gave Nick a free roof, got it paid for by his insurance company. I'm putting the sign in Nick's yard. I don't have to go next door and knock on the neighbor's door. I don't have to go down the street. Everybody who's driving by is seeing that advertisement because it's a billboard in your yard. There's nothing against doing that. And that's how this whole problem got started. So it's kind of like, I think that has more of an influence on people than anything else. And I made the correlation to personal injury attorneys, and coming, you obviously come from that background on the insurance side with regards to claims, but attorneys don't go. I mean, yes, some of them do sit in, hospital rooms and chiropractors' offices and whatnot. But generally speaking, they're not knocking on a client's door. And you can think, when is the last time you got something in the mail from a personal injury attorney going, "Are you injured?" You don't see that. So, they're putting stuff up on billboards, radio commercials, television. And you're starting to see roofing companies do that. There's more, they can still do the same thing. They could put up a billboard and say, hey, here's a picture of Nick outside of his new roof, home with a new roof with a check that says $30,000 on it. There's nothing from stopping them going and getting on a billboard and getting on a roofing. And I think that's one of the big problems. So again, it's a good idea, but it's such a small impact. And again, what do the attorneys do? You told Dan Newland on a billboard not to do something. What does he do? He finds a way around it. You're still seeing the billboard go up in advertising, and the roofing industry will do the same thing. And then a good point we also touched on that somebody had brought up was, well, can somebody else door knock? Can somebody else do that? Yes. You can indirectly, you have chiropractors who are pain management doctors who refer attorneys all the time. There's nothing stopping a public adjuster from referring a consumer to a roofing company indirectly. There's nothing from, we've already seen this, there's nothing from a 1-800 number, an Ask Gary, a 411 pain for the roofing industry. There's already roofclaim.com. They can go out, they're not bound by this law. They can go out and collect as much data and just resell it and leads and resell it to the roofing industry. So again, it's kind of like, I like the state of Florida. Love it or hate it. It's a good idea, but in practicality, I do not hold out a lot of hope for it.
That's crazy. So the other thing is that we talked about this in pre-show, but I just every single day it seems like I get either an email or a text message from somebody that claims that they're going to give me a better deal or a better product when it comes to health insurance. What is the good and the bad to that? Because I know you don't want to just get something just because it sounds like a great deal because you may not have the right coverage,
Yeah, absolutely. And that was just yesterday, actually, I had a client reach out to me. And first thing I said was, I was like, are you listening to like Dave Ramsey? Because a lot of people listen to Dave Ramsey's, financial advice. And I guess Ramsey had been talking about a MediShare plan. And for those of you listeners out there who don't know what that is, MediShare plan is, I don't sell it, so I don't know the ins and outs of it. But from what I understand, it is run by a Christian group, and I believe they have about 300,000 members. And it's very cost effective. Don't get me wrong. It is probably half of what you could get through the ACA, ACHA, or the marketplace or anything else out there. And so it's everybody looks at it like any other insurance product nowadays. It's how much does it cost? And I hate that because it's become over commoditized in what you're buying. But when I started researching the plan, because I didn't know too much about it, it's kind of like the disclaimer is this is not an actual insurance policy. You are just joining a group, kind of in our business, it's almost like a risk retention group is what they would call it, where you're just buying into it and we're sharing the costs, which is technically an insurance company is designed like that, but it is not a typical compliance insurance policy. So they were asking me, well, what's the difference in it? And I was like, well, the major difference is, under the marketplace or under Affordable Health Care Act, they cover pre-existing conditions. This plan does not. I mean, and what you consider a pre-existing condition, like let's say, Nick, you go to the doctor and you said, I'm having some back pain. And they go, well, you have a herniated disc. They could easily say, well, if you say, well, I had a golfing industry, or I dove into a pool wrong 2 years ago. Well, guess what? That provider can come back and say, well, it's a pre-existing condition. Nick says he did this 2 years ago, therefore coverage wouldn't apply. There's also indemnity plans when you get into talking about long hospitalization stays. A lot of these short-term medical plans or Medishare and these retention groups don't cover that. I mean, you literally have to go out and find separate coverage just to cover that. It is basically, if you want access to Teladoc or to get some type of reimbursement to go to, a doc in the box, yeah, it's going to be affordable and you'll be able to get coverage for that, even on your prescriptions. Yes, but it is not a true medical plan. And when you talk about, and it's a reimbursement plan too. So, and people don't realize, reimbursement, it sounds like you're going to be able to do it, but those can be a huge headache. I mean, let's say you got into an auto accident and you got to go to a specialist and you got to go here and treat here and there and get prescriptions. Submitting that to an insurance company and putting it together, I mean, at that point, I'm kind of like, you might as well call an attorney, because that's going to be a full-time job in recouping all that reimbursement monies you are owed. So again, and there's a couple good articles out there on whether you read NPR or not. I don't really have a bias one way or another, but I try not to. But there is actually a really good article on there. If you, I thought it was very educational, and it talked about a younger guy. I think I've actually spoken about this before, who developed cancer, and he went with one of these short-term medical plans, and he was receiving like $100,000 bills from the hospital, from surgeries, from doctors, because the short-term medical plan considered it a pre-existing condition. And what they said was he had a back problem that turned to cancer and whatnot. And I mean, they literally have an army of attorneys to get out of paying it. So again, when you are shopping insurance, in my opinion, I am not a big fan of short-term medical. I mean, is it better than nothing? Absolutely, yes. But if you can afford long-term medical, yes. Because I've seen literally people that I've known over the years who have had to file bankruptcy because of hospital bills. And you never know what can happen to you if you get into, and I had posed this question the other day, well, if I get into an accident and somebody else is going to pay that and an attorney's going to pay that, not if you caused the accident. Still get injured and have $50,000 worth of medical bills. You could come down with, unfortunately, they could find a tumor inside you tomorrow and cancer's not covered. So you got to really think about that. The little things will add up, but if you get hit with something catastrophic and you have no insurance coverage, I mean, you're ruining your credit, you're filing bankruptcy. I mean, it's not a great thing at that point.
No, I completely agree. So basically, like everybody, we always say, is what you get what you pay for. So be careful of those people that trying to sell you something cheap on the fly, because, yep.
Yeah, and people don't realize this too. When an agent writes a compliant policy with Affordable Health Care Act, the Fed determines kind of like what commission you can make off of it. And it's not much. I mean, you're helping people, there's subsidies involved and everything else. So it's kind of like the people who sell it, the agents who sell it, the agencies, the insurers and whatever, they make a certain commission rate on it. The short-term medical, they make a lot of commission on it. And I'm just being 100% transparent. I don't personally sell it, but there is a lot of agencies out there, a lot of companies who sell it. And if you ever question about it, you're questioning kind of like, should I buy this plan? I tell people, I'm like, go to their Facebook page, go to their website, look at it. If you see a bunch of people standing around holding up, $100 bills and like, hey, Mike had $50,000 in sales this month or something like that, be very wary, because that's usually an indication that there's not a lot of coverage. The prices are higher, because you got to look at it from the insurance company's perspective too. The health insurance companies, some of the health insurance companies out there that kind of like, well, if we're not paying out any catastrophic claims, for somebody who's got cancer or somebody who's got hospitalized, it's very profitable for us. We're taking in a lot of money and not paying anything out. So it's a very profitable line of business for them. And that's probably one of the easiest ways to, from an insurance perspective, to look at it is the more commissions they make, guess what? Probably the likelihood the coverage is not that great and the claims experience is not going to be that great either.
No, that's awesome. So we got probably about a couple more minutes left. So what do you want to leave everybody with for the end of this week? I guess you could make it about the cybercrime. Well, I guess one thing I'd like to say is just keep an eye, everybody, out on the storm if you're in real estate, and determine on your closings in case the insurance company decides to stop binding policies on the day of your closing or before your closing. Just make sure that everything's in order. If not, you may have to wait a little while extra to close.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, a great point that we were discussing before. And another thing, I think we just were kind of talking about, like anything else, you get what you paid for. And we've been running up against this, with everybody's rates going up, and especially here in Florida on the homeowners insurance side. And I always like to use the analogy when I'm talking to people about it, because the concept of insurance is you don't buy it. And a lot of people hate this. It's not like a TV where you're going to buy it and you're going to be able to put it on the wall and go home and watch it and get some enjoyment out of it or use, or even like a car. You're going to drive a car. An insurance policy you don't want to use. It is a safety net for something bad happen, and that is the concept. It is a warranty, but it's not like a warranty where my refrigerator breaks down, I want somebody to come and repair it. It's for catastrophic purposes. And when you're looking at prices, you really have to use a lot of reasoning and a lot of logic. The insurance companies for decades have been out there over commoditizing it, and they've been marketing to you that it's price. I got the lowest price and whatnot. But when you look at it, and I tell people this, I use the analogy and I say, Nick, if tomorrow you win $1 million, and let's say your just dream is like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a $150,000 Lamborghini or a Ferrari or Porsche or whatnot. First question I'm probably going to come to you is go, Nick, do you want the best insurance coverage on that Ferrari?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I want, if I get a scratch on it, I want her insurance coverage. How much money will you pay for that? Will you pay a premium to get that insurance coverage? Absolutely. And then I go, Nick, you're going out buying a $500,000 home, let's say, which is 3 times more than the Ferrari. And guess what? You got a mortgage on it, so you're indebted to it as well. So you're telling me that you don't want to go out and buy an insurance policy to cover that likelihood of that house burning down? And guess what? In this day and age, statistically, with what's going on, you're more likely that you're probably going to have a hail claim. You're probably going to have a house that's going to burn down to the ground. You're going to have a water claim and whatnot, besides totaling that Ferrari. It's statistically probable. And I go out and I'm kind of like, well, and that's what your most valuable asset. But again, you want to cover the Ferrari, but you don't want to cover the three Ferraris that is your home that you live in. And I tell people to look at it from a logical, when you look at it, look at insurance from that logical perspective. Just like we were talking about healthcare. If you're willing to gamble your life, go out there and buy the crappiest insurance possible. If you care about your life, invest into it. And that's what I want. I'd like to leave with everybody this week is to really, like I said, don't gamble, think about it, and use logic and reasoning, because advertisers out there and everybody else, a lot of it is just appealing to your emotion, and it's in order to sell you a product to make a profit. And I think that's where I like to differentiate our agency a little more. We try to be, an advocate for our end clients, but the average consumers out there, and being transparent of, this is how the system works. So
completely agree, Mike. Well, thank you again for being on, and look forward to talking to you next week. And we do apologize for any program changes. We are really, really busy in insurance and real estate right now. So if we miss you one week, we apologize in advance. So it's all good though. So we'll be here always though.
Absolutely.
All right, Mike. Well, you have a good weekend. Everybody out there, thank you very much for watching. And remember to subscribe, listen to the podcast, and download it today. Have a great weekend. Be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, stay safe out there, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Don't spend hours or days looking for your new home. Let a downtown Central Florida expert guide you. I'm Nicholas Acosta, and I'm here to welcome you home. Being a Florida native, I know how exciting, stylish, and convenient the downtown lifestyle can be. From the nightlife scene in the heart of downtown to the natural beauty of Florida. I'm Nicholas Acosta, and I'm here to welcome you home.
This has been Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast. Find Nick on Facebook and Instagram at downtown.expert, and also his website, www.downtown.expert, or call or text him at 407-508-8809. Thanks for listening.